Joining us now as we take a look at what is going on with the weather, we are joined for our weekly weather conversation with Eric Snodgrass from Nutrien Ag Solutions, and it's always great to catch up with you, Eric, and joining us from nature today. I mean, you're a meteorologist after all, so getting you outside here to chat with us today, and obviously a little bit of nice weather coming out of the weekend for many folks. A bit cooler temperatures across the country.
Yeah, it is. And that's been, I think, an important thing to think about is that we've had, now we're in July, we've had these big ridges kind of flank North America. And so what happens is in the middle, you get a trough, and that trough has brought in some cooler weather. It's brought in some, perfectly timed cooler weather. And then, of course, before it arrived, we saw that big ridge in Texas develop. We got the ridge riding storms. A lot of them were severe, of course, but there's been moisture that came back to some of the driest parts of the country. So, yeah, I'm outside this morning, had a couple errands to run, and was just taking my kids to their swim practice. But I mean, it's beautiful out, and it's exactly what a lot of us in the Midwest need this time of year. But think about this. Absolutely deluge of rain in the Northeast. We've got big storms over the weekend that hit parts of Oklahoma, the Southern Plains, including more hail. And the big story is where the heat is going to go as we get into this month of July.
Well, let's talk about that. I think that will set us up nicely here before we dive into this week's full forecast. And I'll pull up on our video feed a map you sent over to me. We're looking at some of those sea temperatures, sea surface temperatures, and more, and talking about this El Nino developing still. Walk us through, what are you kind of seeing here? What are you watching as we work into the middle of July?
Yeah, the reason why we look at sea surface temperatures is they're kind of symptomatic of what the whole atmosphere is up to. And they tend to be a coupled system. So if we get a hint about what the bigger picture things is from the ocean temperatures, we can usually translate that into a better longer term forecast. And I'll be honest with you, the big thing I'm watching is the heat that's in the North Pacific, kind of south of Alaska, west of California. We've watched a lot of heat build there. And so what it's doing is it's kind of disrupting the jet stream and making more risk of having high temperatures in the Southwest and then getting over into California as we go forward. And if the heat is there, it's not in the Midwest. What the Midwest tends to get is more of these ridge riding storms. We're going to see clusters of those this week, and then I expect more of them going forward. You add that to the fact that El Nino continues to develop. We may have ocean temperatures that get up there 2 degrees C above normal, which would be another full degree of increase, going forward here from where they currently sit. And these factors tend to be more favorable to what we tend to get here in the Midwestern United States with better storms. Then the Atlantic is boiling. We have 90-degree ocean temperatures off of Florida's western coast right now. 90 degrees. So that's like jumping in to the ocean and it like getting in a bath. And so all of a sudden that begins to just perk our ears for when this hurricane season gets going, what it could do. So these are the moving pieces. And if you're a Midwestern farmer, you like this stuff. This is what we want to see. If you are in the South or in the Southwest or in the West, this is the opposite. This is where the heat's going to go.
Well, and like you said, if you're a Midwest farmer, you like to see this. You mentioned those ridge riding thunderstorms, and that's something that I think many areas of the Corn Belt could definitely use. Let's talk a little bit about this next map on our video feed and just look at the next 7 days ahead or so. You mentioned some of those storms here this week. Where are we looking for some of those ridge riders to work through in parts of the Corn Belt? I've heard some chatter that the northern plains, the upper Midwest, could be a little bit drier here this week, Eric.
Yeah, and that dryness would be of major concern if it was going to get hot. But at this point, I don't see excessive heat in the northern plains. So drier and cooler isn't the deadly combination, but it's been drier in parts of the upper Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, getting into the Canadian Prairie. The Canadian Prairie, in fact, has been very dry throughout the month of June and getting into early July here. But the hole we're expecting to start to fill in is that one that's in parts of Kansas, coming out of Nebraska, hitting southern Iowa, and then Missouri, southern Illinois, Tennessee, Kentucky. We expect a lot of storm clusters to run through that area through this week, and that could just take one more area of concern kind of off the map. But the forecast in Missouri, I think if I had to pick a state that's had more failed forecasts than any other states this year, it's been Missouri. So this is going to be a critical week to watch out for them. But like you said, if there's a trough over the Hudson Bay, we tend to put heat in the Southwest. And so that will be the question. Do we continue to see that pattern evolving through the rest of July, not just here through the middle part of it?
And I think that's something we're going to have to keep our eyes on very closely. Is just what happens here. We get through pollination time frame and more. And I know that weather still obviously a big topic here in the markets and our growing season. Eric, as well, thinking about U.S. weather, but we're also watching around the world. Anything you're keeping an eye on around the world as well that could have an impact here?
I was worried a bit about the North China Plain and the Manchurian Plain, but some of the new forecasts are providing better rains for that area. So, got to take that off the table. Australia finally getting a little drier weather. They should have been dry. If El Nino would have taken over, they should have been dry for a while. But there are pockets in Australia that have had some very late rains, which would be their winter, of course. South America into Argentina, southern Brazil, a lot of precipitation working to undo the drought there. So we could be going into a season next year where now we're talking about Brazil possibly having problems, not necessarily Argentina or southern Brazil. So those are some factors I think going on around the world. And Europe's finally turned a little bit drier in Central Europe after a lot of storm activity in late June and very early July. But just one last comment about July. I don't. This isn't to scare up anything, but I just want to make a point that it looks favorable now, and we see that, and there's a lot of confidence in that for a lot of Midwestern farmers. But remember, we still have the rest of July and August and September to get through, and there are some subseasonal risks out there in August that I want to keep an eye on. One hurricane could undo all of it, but just want to let folks know that this is not like just the full clear, let's go for it, bin busting crop. There's still time for there to be some issues, and I'll watch it, and we'll talk next Monday about it.
That sounds like a plan. And folks can sign up for Eric's weekly weather newsletter. You can find the links on our website. You can also check out ag-wx.com for some of the latest each and every day from Eric Snodgrass and the team there at Nutrien. Eric, always good to catch up with you. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, sounds good.